So I get off the phone and I talk to my partner, Mark, and I go, Mark, our intros are up on the web, and I'm called the 3-time divorcee. He goes, oh, really? He goes, is that like all over the internet? He's not too techie. And I go, yeah. He goes, oh, well, let me tell you, Mark and I have been together for, 3 years? He says, I haven't told everyone that you've been divorced more than once. In fact, my mother doesn't even know. She just thinks you were married once, and I had to because you had kids. I'm like, and it hits me. In that moment, I felt shame. But let me ask you, and don't raise your hand, who in this room has been divorced? Who in this room maybe has been divorced twice? Or even 3 times like me? Who in this room has lived together with someone maybe 6 months, a year, and then you separated? So why was I feeling shame in that moment being part of a group that so many of us are actually a part of? And I really had no reason to feel shameful. As Bonnie said, I adopted a child, and I've raised actually 3 amazing kids. I ran my own consulting business and actually retired at 55. I've supported myself financially since 16, and actually in all those divorces, I always had to hand over half. I've traveled the world. I've hiked 650 kilometers on the Camino. I've raced sailboats. But why was I feeling shame? And this wasn't the first time that I'd got this. I mean, I used to always joke that, yeah, I've been married 25 years, just not with the same guy. And this was a running joke with a bunch of my friends. And it would go something like this. We'd be sitting around and we'd be talking about marriage. And maybe we were talking about what our dress looked like. And I'd go, well, my dress, blah, blah, blah. And they'd go, which one, Delores? And I'd maybe talk about a characteristic of my husband. Which one, Delores? Or I'd share something that we had done, maybe a place we had traveled. And they inevitably would say, all together now, which one, Delores? Yeah. Or, let me tell you about the province of Ontario. So I was getting married the 3rd time, and I decided to change my name. But let me step back. When I got married the 1st time, I assumed his name, Martin. The 2nd time, I didn't. And the 3rd time now, I was getting married, and I decided to assume his name. So I sent in that paperwork to the province of Ontario. And this was going on. They were asking me questions, emails back and forth. So I decided I'd get on to the call center and figure out what was doing. So I got onto the phone, and I'm talking to this lovely gentleman. And he's saying, well, I can't change your name until I have your divorce papers from Martin, my first husband. And I said, but I don't have those divorce papers because I had to hand them in when I married the 2nd person. Well, what's their name? Abernethy. Yeah, but you're not changing it from Abernethy to Montgomery. You're changing it from Martin. Well, we just kept going around on this. And then finally, lovely guy, he says, ma'am, might I suggest you don't change your name? In hindsight, no truer words could have been spoken. So I decided I wasn't going to let this go. I was actually going to really, what was going on with me? And a dear friend said to me, she said, Delores, what exactly did you learn from being married 3 times and then divorced 3 times? And I thought about it. And my first answer was, prenuptial agreements? But no. I sat and I thought about it. And I thought, marriage allowed me to see the parts of myself that needed work. And divorce gave me the space to do that work. So in essence, divorce was my lab, and marriage was the field in which I tested upon. And because of that, that was who I would become. So I thought I'd share a couple things with you on what I did learn and a couple things I learned about shame. So what I learned in those years was to be curious to figure out, why was I having these breakdowns? I couldn't really blame it on, I just picked the wrong guy. And also curious to what I hadn't been given growing up and what I needed to learn. And curious to how people are wired, because it really was people that were at the center of my relationships. And curious to, what does it take to have a great relationship? And I got committed to finding those pieces of myself that were missing and helping to find other people to find those same pieces for themselves. And as Bonnie mentioned, I do teach a program for adult survivors of childhood abuse. And committed to my own self-awareness and not to marriage as a form to masquerade or disguise my own survival needs and an image. And committed to learning. And I got caring to understand that people are a messy, complex being. And that what was perhaps missing in me was also missing in them. And caring about myself. And I got courageous. Courageous to keep learning, to keep trying. It takes a lot of courage to be divorced. It takes a lot of courage to be married. And it takes a lot of courage to raise children of divorce. And it takes a lot of courage sometimes to gently tell your friends that some of those comments do hit a sore spot at times. And I learned contentment, that you could still achieve all your hopes and dreams, even going through the upheavals of divorce. And that divorce for me was something that happened as I was out there living my life on the field and learning how to live with myself and live with others. Which brings me to character. Marriage and divorce were the catalysts for me to become who I am today. And those experiences made me become a better version of myself. And there's nothing shameful in that. And shame, I learned a couple things. Catch it. Shame will show its head again. And just recognize it's there and step back and remind yourself who you are and who you became because of those experiences. And communicate it. Brené Brown says that shame exists because of secrecy. And it's events like this, MoMondays, that allow us to share those stories. I am Delores, the 3-time divorcee.